It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, if you like the show, be sure and check out our Patreon. We got a lot of great new content up on Patreon. We did an interview with the widow of John McAfee. Really good content there. Okay. If you go to the archives, you can find our guest, Ambra Marie. We had her on recently. It wasn't that long ago either. But I had such a good time. She's written this book. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. You can find her first on Instagram at Ricky4Lou, L-O-U. And you can see her stuff on there on Instagram. And you can find her website. Now, it's Ambra, A-M-B. We were just laughing about this off there. It's Ambra, A-M-B-R-A. Then it's HuemanSol, but it's spelled H-U-E-M-A-N-S-O-L. And that's at .weebly.com. You can find it there. But go to the Ricky4Lou, and you can probably find anything better there. She's written this incredible workbook called Unifying the Soul. We talked about this last time she was on. Great energy from this woman, beautiful woman, great, so interesting, and great energy coming from Ambra Marie. So, Ambra, are you there?
I am here. Hello, Ed.
Yeah, I hear you laughing over there. So you're laughing at me. I know you're there. I can't
here.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. Last time you were on the show, I just left the interview just feeling so uplifted and in a better mood. Remind the audience, who is Ambra Marie?
Wow. As I said before, Ambra is a interesting human. Yeah. I am still learning about myself more and more every day. I am a mother. I grew up in Southern California and moved to the deserts of Las Vegas in my early 20s. I am just interested in the mystery of everything. Anything that doesn't have a concrete answer or can allow me to spin down the spirals of curiosity, I'm all about it. So this is what led me to creating this workbook that we talked about on the last time I was on your show. And yeah, I've traveled around the world. I've gotten to experience many different cultures and many different experiences that people and Earth have to offer. And I'm just incredibly blessed to have lived the life I have so far.
Yeah, that's right, because you lived in the Amazon for a while, right?
Yeah, I've gone to Peru a couple times, and there's an indigenous tribe, the Shipibo peoples, that I go and stay with. We're completely off-grid in the middle of the jungle, and I've gone there for a few weeks at a time, and I've just really learned and immersed myself in their culture and the land and their medicines that they work with and their songs, and it's just been such an incredible experience.
Yeah, I remember last time you were telling us about it was something about a frog, I think it was, that you sit near the frog or something like that, and you gather this energy from the frog. And I actually, we actually cut some commercials out of the last interview because I let you go over. You were telling this story about this frog. Now, what was this again about the frog that you sat next to the frog and you gathered the energy from the frog?
So it's frog medicine. It's called combo. It's basically you extract the venom from the frog. They sing in the jungle at night. So you go and you hunt in the jungle and you look for these calls from this frog, and they come and they crawl all over you. And the shamans, so the medicine people, will collect the venom off of their backs. And it's actually a really, really potent anti-inflammatory medicine that they serve to their people and their children. And I have gotten to learn and serve and work with this medicine as well. It's definitely a challenging medicine to work with. It's not comfortable because basically you're acutely poisoning your body and putting it into its complete defense mode. But the health benefits are incredible and amazing. And I see this medicine, especially with the time we are in now, really being utilized and working to help people.
In what way? What would it do for us now?
So strengthening your immune system, getting rid of any impurities in the body, including parasites, bacteria, viruses, any dangerous fungals. It's good for people who have adverse reactions to any sort of medical medicines that they've taken. So yeah, it's good for arthritis. It's good for people with any brain injuries and trauma. The benefits of this seem completely unreal, but I've seen it work in the people I know and the people I've sat with, and listening to people's stories working with this medicine. And it sounds like a miracle medicine. And to this day, I still am, trying to learn and study as much as I can about it, because there isn't a lot of studies, but it's amazing.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. Someone takes the time to go there and and visit this frog and do all this research. Someone takes the time to do this. Now, you would think, the pharmacy industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they could breed these frogs, right? Why wouldn't they want to do that if it's so good?
I think we know why.
Yeah.
I think we know the real reason why they won't do things like that. But I'll keep my opinions to that on myself.
Yeah, I know. I was just telling you this last night. I got a new prescription for Provigil, and you go to one pharmacy on Rx.com. It's $240 a month. Another, go to a different pharmacy. It's $24 a month.
Oh, wow. Yeah. None of it makes sense, but at the same time, it makes sense.
Capitalism. Unifying the Whole. What are we going to find in your book, or your workbook, Unifying the Whole?
So Unifying the Whole is it's a self-guided workbook and journal that navigates us to a more inward view of ourselves. It allows us to connect and hold ourselves in new ways. We learn about the 7 main energy centers in the body, the information these hold, how to unlock this information from our past, and how to significantly reframe how we view our present. So this is for anyone who wants to have, a therapeutic session with themselves and to see what is still weighing heavy within us, and kind of work with those traumas and those shadows and allow them space to grieve and kind of teach us whatever it is we need to learn about ourselves.
So, now, the last time I had you on the show, we talked about your workbook, and people can look that up on Spreaker or just Google it, Unifying the Soul, Ambra Marie, Opperman Report. You'll find it. But when I start the show off, I said, well, tell us about yourself. Who is Ambra Marie? And you tell me that this is why we had you back on the show, because you tell me you're a death doula. Okay? I had never even heard of this before. I've heard about birth doula. Okay? So tell us about this. Now, this is why we had you back. What is a death doula?
So a death doula, they're also called end-of-life doulas. And like you said, as people are assisting birth, there are also those that are assisting the other side of it. So we are a non-medical professional that holds space for the exploration of one's own mortality and guides an individual through their unique dying process. So again, as the birth doula helps the energy into the world, we assist the energy on the way out of this world and into the next, whatever that is and means for someone. We assist the dying into the birth of a new beginning. Because as I know, as working with people, death is not an ending. Yes, it's a physical ending, but it's also a transition into some sort of different vibrational frequency. So in essence, we're kind of a link between science and mystery, between the seen and the unseen worlds.
And how'd you get involved in this?
Honestly, I never thought about doing this type of work, but now reflecting on my life, it makes perfect sense. And of course, this is what I was being led to. I've had many unique experiences with different types of deaths on many different levels, from very tragic deaths to our way of thinking of a more natural death, someone dying of old age. But my friend started this academy called the Anamkara, which is Celtic for soul friend, which couldn't be any more perfect because I feel like we're all just kind of walking each other home. But she founded this academy and kind of presented it to me. And at first I was like, what, like with you, what is this? Yeah. And she was on a mission to rebrand death, to normalize death, to talk about death. And anyone who feels activated by anything I say on this podcast, I highly recommend reaching out to her. Her name is Mary Teliano. And again, it's the Anamkara Academy. But yeah, Death Doula is there to just listen and make someone feel safe and loved. We provide the opportunity to speak openly and frankly about someone's unique dying process. What we do is we develop a plan for how someone wants their death to look, how they want their space to look. And we also provide rest time for exhausted caregivers and family. And again, while we don't give any medical advice, we can explain the very unique and telling signs and symptoms of the dying process. We cook and share meals. We just try to make this transition as beautiful as possible. And then we also help process the emotions and the experience with loved ones with the grief. We're there to guide the family into what they're going to experience after their loved one has passed on, to assist them through understanding grief and what that means now and what it will mean, and how to hold space for another through their process of grief.
And this is called the Autumn Cara Academy?
It's called the Anam Cara, so it's ANAMCARA. So
again,
the Anam Cara.
Another thing you can't find. Okay, Anam Cara Academy, okay. And there's a website for that?
Yeah, you can just go to the Anam Cara Academy, or you could go to Mary Taliano on Instagram. Or you can I linked through mine as well.
Okay, great. Now, how is this funded? Okay, because, usually the end of life, the Medicare comes in involved, and you have to sell your house, and they teach all the kind of tricks to be poverty, so that you can fund all this. Are your services funded?
So my services, I work voluntarily through hospice, but I also take on private clients. And this is just for family members that want to give this gift to their dying person. It's not super expensive. I know when we think of like hospitals and medical bills, racking up the numbers in your head, you're like, how could this possibly be affordable for someone? But death doulas, we work with people. We're not about the money. Obviously, it's an exchange, and there is some sort of exchange that needs to happen for us to be able to do this type of work. But it's also not something that we're trying to get rich off of. So, for instance, my rate is anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour, just depending on what services it is I'm providing. If I'm going to be there all day, obviously, I'm not going to be charging people, $800 for my time for the day. But it's on a case-by-case basis. Like I said, we're very understanding and work with the families and the people who are dying, because this is a passion and this is something that we are passionate about.
Yeah, there was a time, like when I was a little kid, doctors came, they made house calls. When your kid was sick, the doctor would come with his little bag, his little medicine bag, and visit your home. And we weren't paying that guy $1,000 to come to our home, I don't know what we paid him. But there was a time, we had some kind of care about each other.
Yeah. And my medicine bag looks a little different than a doctor's. I bring, singing bowls and oils and books and things to read and make someone feel comfortable. But I think the most important part is just showing up and being a presence and being a body of comfort, and to know that someone's not alone in their process. And a death doula is there to listen and make someone feel safe and feel loved. And we provide the opportunity to speak openly and frankly about their unique dying process. And like I said, we do a lot of visual work. So above all, it's about active listening to the deep concerns, the fears, the hopes, their life stories, and bring them peace at the end of their life.
What kind of oils?
Just anything essential. So again, it depends on the person. Some people are really sensitive to smells when it comes to that particular stage of their dying process. So anything that's natural. It's not going to be anything that's heavy perfumed. It's more like earthly scents. So like patchoulis or frankincense, or even just burning sage in the room. But again, before we do any of that, we walk in and we map out a plan. Like, what do you want this room to feel like? Do you want people to remove their shoes when they come in? Do you want the lights to be dim? Do you want to be near a window? This is their process, and we're there to do anything we possibly can to make it as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, I can't recommend enough frankincense and myrrh, and get the therapeutic, it's cheap, and you get the therapeutic version. Headaches, Yeah, this stuff is so good for you, and it's in the Bible. You'd think people would say, boy, the three wise men brought frankincense and myrrh to the baby Jesus. Let me look into this, see what it is, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's something, if we've been using these things for so long, there's got to be something to it, right?
Yeah, right, but people, they never even, whoa, what's that? You know, never even heard. How long have you been doing this?
So I began the academy at the end of 2019, and I graduated right at the beginning of 2020. So March of 2020 is when I graduated this academy. And of course, maybe a week after, the whole world kind of shut down and people were dying. So there was kind of a need for this conversation. And, you know, I still have a lot to learn, and I am constantly learning in this field of work. But for me, the proper and authentic way to serve without limitations or creating someone else's visions of what this should look like, again, it's just going back to the active listening to the individual and unfold in their process with it all. You know, death is this mystery. It's something we cannot completely understand, describe, explain, yet it is something we will all experience. And we do not get to control how death shows up and plays out, but we get to choose how we unravel in the experience and allow death to be the guide, because it is not ours. We are witnessing another's initiation. And I mean, what an honor that is. So I just am grateful for all the people that I have helped transition and for the families that I still get to work with and for the stories and the knowledge and the wisdom that I get to carry with me from just being by the bedside of a lot of these individuals.
Now, you're meeting these people for the first time. You're coming into their home and a big transition at time. Now, I can understand how you can go in there and you have this welcoming energy. They would just love to have you come in their home. But there must be an awkwardness to this stranger coming into this home at this pivotal time.
Yeah. Usually we work with people in the last 3 to 4 months of their life. So people get a prognosis and they know they're at the end of their time, but they have a little bit of time. So we get to build that relationship. You know, we're not just coming in and, you know, they have weeks, days, or hours left. Right. You know, we're building that bond with them ahead of time. And although I have stepped in those last moments with people that didn't know me, again, I think people recognize my energy, and even though it took me a long time to witness that within myself, there is something that I hold within myself that makes people feel comfortable. I can't even tell you how many times strangers I've sat next to on an airplane or at the grocery store will just completely open up to me about very personal, deep things. And they're like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I just told you this. And in my head, I'm like, I do. I know why. You're sensing, you know, all this other weird energy that I'm into. So I have a gift of making people feel very safe and very comfortable. But again, we're coming in with, you know, a couple months under our belt of building that bond with someone and really getting to learn the family and really getting to know this individual as, you know, who they were, who they want to be remembered as. So it's not always, you know, the shock of like, who's this stranger coming into my home, you know, like the Grim Reaper coming in.
that would be, if you came in with a hood, a sickle, you know, that would be interesting. But me and Ambra know each other from Vegas, from political activism. And I can tell you, you know, anytime Ambra would show up at a meeting or a rally or something like that, she does have that kind of energy. The room, the energy of the room changes. And I have that same thing, too, where people can talk to me and confide in me. I guess from my work as a private investigator. But definitely don't have that same kind of taking over a room kind of energy. Now, what about like a deathbed confessions?
So when people are at the end of their life, like, I feel like, man, it's such a sacred space and a sacred time for them to be truly raw and truly authentic. And at the end of it, people are just at complete peace. All that fear dissipates. And when they start to be able to see through that veil and kind of get to peek into the other side, even though I haven't gotten to see it for myself, getting to witness people peek through that and see what's on the other side has brought me so much peace to my own mortality, because there's no fear, there's no regret, there's only love. I feel like the days, weeks beforehand is when all the deathbed confessions come out. The fear is really starting to sink in. They're talking about the regrets and how they, wish they would have lived more fully, or taken that trip to Europe, or, made amends with that person that they're not talking to. But in those final moments, all of that dissipates. It's just a readiness to move on to whatever that next adventure is.
How long is that? Those final moments?
It depends. It could be, a day. It could be a couple of hours. It could be, it just depends on the person. I was just back home last Christmas, just this past Christmas, and my uncle was actively dying, and he had been actively dying for, about a week and a half now. And, I went to go visit him on Christmas Day, and obviously doing the work I do, I was able to recognize as soon as I walked into the home that this was probably going to be his last day.
Wow.
There's very telling signs. One of them, which I recognized immediately, is called the death rattle. It's a very specific type of breathing. And my aunt was very hopeful that he was going to make it to his next doctor's appointment, and they were going to try this new medication, and that he had some more time. So as difficult as it was to kind of bring reality to the situation, it was also an honor to allow her to have those last moments, knowing that those were going to be those last moments. And he ended up dying the following morning. So within hours of me being there. So yeah, it just depends on the person and how hard they're holding on.
You should write a book about this.
I know. It's very interesting. These intimate spaces are just on a whole other level of just connecting to something bigger than us.
Yeah. Now you said earlier, you said a couple of times that you're sure that they're transitioning to another thing. How can you be sure? I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a faith-based person. I'm more of a spiritual-based person. And again, recognizing there's something bigger beyond this. There's something that we don't quite understand. And I am not one to label and hold myself and tie down to any belief in particular. I'm open to whatever that experience is. I know there is something bigger, but I don't quite know what that is. And it's kind of I find comfort in just I'll know when I know. Right. But now, what about the people? What do you call people about to die? What would you call them?
I would just call them people, humans that are transitioning on to the next great adventure. The actively dying, right? The sages, the wise ones, the ones with that hold all the mystery.
Now they must have their own religious beliefs and faiths and stuff like that. Do they ask you to pray with them or other things?
Yeah, when I step into someone's space, I am there to serve, and whatever faith that they claim, and whatever, even if they don't claim in any faith, I am there to serve wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. And even people of faith have fear around death. People that, believe in God and believe that they're going to heaven, there's still a fear around death. But I think that all comes back to us not speaking about death and normalizing death as something that we're all going to experience. For as long as we've lived, we've also died. It's the simple fact of life. We are all going to die. We will all lose someone we love. We will all grieve. And no one is immune to it. It's something that we all live with. And yet we still find death and dying and grief so difficult to talk about. And I understand it's unsettling to think about our mortality. The finality and uncertainty that surrounds death can be frightening. But most of us attempt to put it out of our minds on a daily basis. But, when we attend funerals and we see headlines about, tragedies and all this death that's happening, it kind of puts a spotlight on death. But again, people kind of ignore it and they don't want to think about it. And while the idea of living every day as your last might sound great, a constant awareness of death can leave most feeling really anxious and uncomfortable. But I like to think of death as kind of like our greatest teacher. death asks us to integrate within ourselves more of reality, to live life to our best ability, to connect with each other and to explore our passions and explore this beautiful planet. And death gives permission to have all we desire if we choose to fully lean into living a life that is meaningful to us. So by embracing the end as much as we do the beginning, and by acknowledging our mortality, by not thinking that we have forever, and by not taking our beautiful life for granted, we might just be able to see the world in a different way and be more compassionate with one another.
Wow. You would think, right? Now,
I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope, right?
That's the hope. Now, but what about some of these people? Are they ever convinced, I've lived a horrible life, I've hurt people, I'm going to hell? I guess not the people that would involve you in their passing, but have you experienced that?
I mean, I have not personally experienced that, but, you know, I also have to recognize that not all death is beautiful. There are really tragic and unfortunate circumstances where people die, you know, being murdered or war or anything else that's not as beautiful as me sitting by your bedside and, you know, watching you drift away. You know, there are these really hard deaths that people experience, and, you know, people that do these unfathomable events that take another's life, you know, I don't know. I don't know what happens to them. I think it's the same that happens to everyone. Your energy gets absolved and transmutes into whatever karmic way it needs to. But again, those are those great mysterious questions that we don't have the answers to.
But you've been there physically at that passing. Do you notice a change in the energy of the room?
Yes, there's a stillness. You can always tell the moments before because it gets very quiet.
Right.
And the people that are watching their loved ones die, you can sense that uncomfortability, and then trying to fill that stillness with something, with words, with, you know, don't leave me, or like, you know, those selfish qualities that we all have, of course, of not wanting to see our loved one go. But I think we need to stop filling those still times with noise because there's so much wisdom in those silent spaces of observing and just feeling that energy. Like, it's a type of connectiveness that is indescribable. It's really, really beautiful. And, you know, to hear someone say death is beautiful, you know, death is beautiful. It's, you know, it's an honor to be in these moments, in these like really raw moments with people and their families, and to hold people in these spaces.
I've been in the presence of miracles, and my experience is that time slows down. There's like a slow, yeah. So it's that same kind of thing.
Yeah, you just feel everything shift.
Right.
And you feel the expansion of the energy. And again, anything that's expansive feels way bigger. And again, time slows down, as you said. So nothing ever diminishes. We're only expanding and shifting into something different. And yeah, those really slowed down moments are, I think, the biggest teaching moments.
Yeah, and it's so true. And now with TV and these phones, these smartphones, we don't have that kind of peace and quiet in our lives like we once did. Now, what about you're in the room, the loved ones are there. Now, their energy turns to grief. Mm-hmm. There must be like a huge shift in the energy in the room.
Yes, grief is, I mean, I don't know. Grief to me is just a reminder of how much we truly loved someone or something. So even in the throes of our grief, the other side of that is love. And just allowing people to grieve, not stopping it, not saying, not using those words like it's going to be okay, they're in a better place, you know, all those words that we are programmed to tell people. Just being a body for someone to completely fall into and collapse into their grief. And that's like another part of being a death doula, is the aftermath. So we get to assist the families for, you know, as long as they are needing us in their grief process. You know, I had dealt with death many different times in my life, and even going through my own grief process was difficult because I felt completely alone in it. And just being able to connect with people, and again, not as much as we want to let the people dying know that they're not alone, people are not alone in their grief too, because we've all experienced grief on some level. And it has been really interesting for me to release this fear of death when it comes to grief. It's just like loving someone so fiercely. And for me personally, grieving the people I love is the biggest way I can honor them.
This is such an emotional experience. After the passing, do you stay in touch with the families?
Yeah. So we help them throughout the funeral process too. Again, while we're working with a person who is actively dying, we let us know what they want that to look like, what they want their funeral to look like, what they want their, burial, cremation, everything to look like. That way, everything's laid out. The family doesn't have to stress about anything like, oh, what would they have wanted, or am I doing this right? All that gets to be handled and taken care of by the person dying, and the family can just experience and grieve and tell stories and connect with the others that loved them so much. So again, my sister who created this academy, she had this brilliant idea of wanting to start doing living funerals. So actually having and holding a vigil and space while the person is still here, so that they can exchange stories and they can have those moments together, so that when it does happen, it's, a little less of a, like the I wishes and the woulda, coulda, shouldas at the funeral. So I love the idea of living funerals. I think it's beautiful. I think it gives people so much closure. I think it heals families. I think it mends wounded lines. And there's just so many beautiful benefits to having those spaces while the person is still here and present.
Now, it's after someone, especially like an old couple, they've been together 30, 40 years, and when one partner passes, the other partner will usually pass in 6 months, unless they, there's some kind of intervention. And when my mother passed, I moved down to Florida to be with my dad, because we knew they were so close. He would visit her at the nursing home 3 times a day and feed her 3 meals a day. For like 8 years he did this, okay? So we knew that there was such a connection between the two of them that he would be going in 6 months if we didn't give him something to look forward to. Now, have you seen that? What about the passing of the partners?
So I haven't dealt with the passing of the partners. I haven't held space for that. But I can say the first experience I had with death was my grandfather. I was 15, and that was the first death I had ever experienced in my life. And he was my whole world, as well as my grandmother's whole world. And she's still here. She's still alive. He's been gone for, 25 plus years now, 26 years. But she's never moved on. She's never found another person. She still, speaks highly of him. She still has a lot of his belongings. And some people, they don't move on. But, there's definitely a loss with her since he's passed. And I know she's probably looking forward to the day that they get to reunite again. But, his death was the first death that taught me everything about death, because again, I had never experienced it. And then since his death, I've experienced many, many deaths, and some from very, very tragic ways. I lost 2 friends in high school to a car accident when we were 16. They had just gotten their license and passed away a week later.
Oh my God.
So I've experienced death a lot at a young age. And then even in my mid-20s, I lost a best friend to murder, and that was horrific. So, I didn't recognize it then, but all of these things were kind of building me up for something bigger, to be able to relate to death on many levels, and to be able to hold this death and relate with people who are grieving through various types of death.
I tell you, when you say that your grandfather passed at 15, that was 25 years ago. People should go to the Instagram, Ricky4Lou, Ricky4Lou, and look at some pictures of Ambra. We should all go get one of those frogs, okay? 'Cause this woman looks about 25 years old. Okay,
I'm going to be 40 this year.
Oh, God bless you, man. We all got to go get those frogs. I figured you're about 25, 30. Okay. Now, what about, have you ever been brought in to be present at the passing of a child? A child maybe has leukemia or cancer or something like that?
So when my friend was murdered, the only time I was in the presence of a child is with my friend. They were in a really horrific, I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie. They were shot many, many times, but one of my friends survived and one of my friends didn't. But my friend that did survive was pregnant, and she had gotten shot in the stomach, and the baby did not live. And so I was present for the birth of this child who was deceased. And that's the only time I've been in the presence of a child who had already passed and a mother who was grieving and having to witness this. And it was one of the more difficult times with death I've ever been in, just because, you know, I, as a mother, like, I could not even imagine going through anything like that. But, yeah, just kind of being a pillar of presence there for my friend as she's, you know, going through this experience. But yeah, that's the only time I've been in the presence of a child who has passed. Yeah,
I had to go to a funeral once of a passing of an infant. That little tiny white coffin was just heartbreaking, the most heartbreaking thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
What is it about?
That's like that cruelness of death. Like, death can seem very cruel at times too, but, you know, you just have to kind of hold on to the thought that there was something much bigger and more peaceful for them to experience.
And you said earlier that you believe that your grandmother will be reunited with the grandfather. And so you believe the people that we see are other people from our lives in the afterlife.
Yeah, and the reason why I believe that is not only through my own experiences. You know, I've sat with many different medicines where I've had people who have passed come to me and have me relay messages. But even in those moments when people are dying, they always talk about, like, their loved ones greeting them. So when that veil gets very thin, people start to see loved ones that have passed, and they start talking to them as if they're right there next to them in the room. So that's kind of like changed my view on, you know, our energies kind of being where it needs to be. Even though I feel like we dissipate in a way, I also feel like we can come back into those moments to ease other people through the gateways. So again, this is just kind of what I've seen and what I believe, but again, it's just one of those things that I won't really know until I know. But I have seen people talk to their, you know, their sisters or their brothers or their mothers or their fathers on the other side, like they're right there. And that's like another telltale sign of that the end is coming near, because that gateway is starting to open. The people are starting to welcome them to the other side.
Well, you're a first-hand eyewitness. So now, what is that conversation like? Do you hear both ends of the conversation, or is it just sporadic?
I only hear the one-sided of the conversation. There'll be a point where they'll look, and you'll tell that they're looking at something or someone, but they'll get very happy and very excited,
oh my God.
And then they'll just start speaking to the person as if time had never passed. Like, where have you been? Like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you're here. Like, oh my gosh, I've missed you so much. Like, I'm so excited to see you. You know, it's an elation, like a happy feeling that people get when they see someone that they've missed so much.
And how often does that happen?
I mean, it's happened a couple times. It doesn't happen every time, but it has happened a few times to where I'm like, whoa, this is really special, like, to witness. And again, I can only see in the physical what's happening. I can't see beyond the veil of what the other side looks like, what this interaction is. But nonetheless, it's miraculous and really interesting.
Oh yeah, that would be fascinating. No, do you talk about like a tunnel or a light, you know, a light or anything?
People don't really talk. I mean, I've never heard anyone say, like, oh, go into the light or anything like that. It's just kind of more like I picture it, how I've seen it described, as like a piece of lace. Like, you kind of can start to see through it, and then it kind of just slowly starts to disintegrate until it's completely gone. And when it's completely gone, that's when the person's pretty much gone on the other side. But it's like that lace. Like, that you can see through, but it's still kind of a little bit of a mystery until it slowly just kind of starts burning and falling away, and it reveals itself more and more to the person who is transitioning.
Now, after the person's passed, Since you become so close to them, do you ever feel their presence or their energy afterwards?
Yeah, so we encourage the family to leave the body for at least a day. We've been trained in how to wash and clean the body, and drape and shroud the body in flowers and whatever is, special to them. But in most traditional, like Egyptian cultures and Aztec cultures and Mayan cultures, they actually leave the body for 3 days because they think that's how long it takes for the soul to completely detach from the body. So we encourage the family to kind of just let the body settle as much as possible, to still keep it quiet, to still keep it as an actively dying space. Let people, have their moments, and then from there, the coroner is called, or whatever the plan is for what they wanted. In some states, it is legal to leave the body there for 3 days. In some states, it's not, because it becomes more of like a hazardous situation. But as long as you're with someone who knows what they're doing and they are cleaning the body, and the person didn't die of any, tragic, like blood disease or something that's going to be toxic to someone else, it's perfectly safe to leave the body and to, as ancients have said, let the soul completely detach from the body. So, it just depends, again, with what the wishes are of the family and the actively dying person.
Now that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even think that, because I know that they get come inventory, all kind of stuff to probate. Now, but do you report the body, the death, or just keep it quiet?
So it depends again. Most people will report the death. Usually they'll have a doctor or nurse that they've also been working with.
Gotcha,
we're not, again, because we're not a medical professional there is someone there, like if it's hospice or in the home, there's a medical professional there, and they do report, and, clock the death time and all that stuff. But they are also very forgiving and understanding of, leaving the body, and whatever religious or cultural or, whatever someone's wishes are. Most people are pretty, cool with allowing the family to do what they will.
In Nevada, just a short time ago in Nevada, it was legal to bury a body in your backyard. You could bury your loved ones in your backyard. Not that long ago. Not that long ago, Okay.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing for me is just being comfortable with my own mortality. I was never afraid of death. But it's something I always knew that would happen to me. But I feel like working with people in this capacity has really diminished that fear of death even more so. I used to be very fearful of, what that was. Yeah. And it was unsettling to me. But being with these people has brought me so much peace, and it's such a gift to no longer fear death, and to kind of, again, look at death as like an ally to living my life to the fullest.
Now, you see these cases all the time where someone will hold out. Someone's at the end of their life, and they hold out till a holiday or an event, and then they pass away right after Christmas. So many people pass away. Have you experienced that?
Yes, and they don't do that for themselves. They do that for us.
Right.
That's for us. They do that because, just like with my uncle, I know he held out not dying on Christmas Day because he didn't want Christmas Day to be like this tragic day for everyone. So, he waited till the next day. But that's all for us. That's their final gift for us, to not, I don't want to say taint, because death I don't feel taints anything, but to not allow it to completely take over a different event, that we should be enjoying family time or connecting with each other. Death asks us to integrate life. And life is to connect with each other and to be with each other and to love each other. And even though I don't fully understand the capacity of death, I've gotten glimpses of it through those I've served, and death is not the enemy. It's definitely not the enemy. I think our ignorance to death has made dying from a transition into this fullness, into kind of a failure and a tragedy and something that we have to beat. And, with all the advances in medical to kind of postpone the dying process, it's kind of taken away from the natural part of the dying process. So, I mean, it's just a lot. It's a lot to unpack, and we deny and shun death, and often it's hard for us to see our loved ones die, so we send them to nursing homes or to hospitals instead of doing it in the old ways where we had them in our homes surrounded by loved ones. And it's sad that a lot of people do die alone in these spaces.
Yeah, my ex-wife was an ICU nurse, and especially back in New York at NYU, she did the heart retrievals, heart transplants, and I found out that it's common for these ICU nurses, when someone's at the end of their life, the quality of their life is diminished, that to resuscitate them, they shoot that epi into the bag, but instead they'll shoot it into the mattress and let the guy die. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. When you first share that story, but you did what?
A little traumatic.
Yeah, you did what? But now, how do you feel about like assisted suicide or quality of life, end of life situation?
So I have it's probably not going to be for everyone, but I feel as tragic as suicide is, and as much as there's probably some underlying issues that come along with suicide, if in that clear, present space moment someone decided to take their life, I honor that. I honor whatever decision an individual makes for themselves, whether it's by the hand of their own or by assisted suicide. We don't get to play God, and we don't get to decide how people live. And like I said, it's unfortunate and it is sad, and I feel like there, again, is a lot of underlying issues that comes along with that. But if that is that person's decision, then I honor and respect that decision. And it's a very brave decision. I mean, I can't imagine being in those moments of wanting to end my life and actually moving forward with it, because, that's a big move.
Oh, yeah, it's uncertain. Now you said earlier, too, that you had experience with, I think you said meds. Now, this is like ayahuasca type stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, so I sat with numerous plant medicines. I sat with, psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, ibogaine, all kinds of different plant medicines. Those also have kind of like alleviated my fear of death too. They've kind of made me realize that we are all dying, we are all actively dying on a daily basis, whether that's through death itself or whether it's through the ending of relationships with, romantic partners, family, friendships. Parts of us die and fall away and shed all the time. So accepting these small deaths has prepared me for the big death.
Now that's fascinating. Especially the ibogaine. How do you pronounce it?
Which one? Oh, ibogaine.
Ibogaine, yeah, because I'm very familiar with that because my friends with the yippies back in Manhattan in New York City swore that was a cure for heroin addiction, and they yes. It
has very promising studies. They do have ibogaine clinics in Canada and Mexico, and they have a 98% success rate of kicking people off of really hardcore drugs, which is an incredible statistic. But on the other hand, a lot of people that relapse will immediately die because they have been completely cleared, and when they go back to thinking they can take the normal dose that they have, it becomes fatal to them. So it's that fine line of making people aware, yes, it could heal you, but if you relapse, it could kill you instantly.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to my friend Fred Gottbetter. And if you look up his name, he was part of those studies in Manhattan with the yippie spokesperson. And they got him off, man. Yeah, and he was in such bad shape, too. Everyone abandoned him. He's just miserable. And they got him on that ibogaine stuff, and he was healed and then overdosed shortly after that. Yeah, so you can look up the name Fred Gottbetter, man. The guy was a hero to me, man. Told me everything.
Yeah, I would love to look him up and learn about his story because, we can learn even from past deaths. Like there's just so much wisdom and so much knowledge that are encapsulated in each individual death. And each step I take into the unknown and allow things to fall away without trying to desperately grasp and keep them prepares me even more. And then on top of that, holding empathy and compassion for people in my daily life is important to the work I do.
And for the audience, we have A.J. Weberman coming back. So just to know, Fred worked for A.J. and I worked for Fred back in those days. Now, in your travels and your experiences, other cultures, they're dealing with death. What have you found there?
So mainly, like, when we were in our schooling, we learned a lot about how the Egyptians handled death. And again, they wouldn't touch the body. And then they were very big on the karma of it all, the weighing of the heart against the feather and, the gateway, like how pure did you live your life? So I learned a lot about that, but even more so going back to, Peru and working with those indigenous cultures. The way they honor death is even beautiful. I mean, everyone has their own way of honoring death, but again, they honor death by serving medicine. So a lot of people get served ayahuasca in their active stage of dying and kind of drift away into the medicine, which, I mean, I've done the medicine not actively dying, and I've felt like I've died many times during that medicine. So being actively dying and taking a medicine that helps you die, like, I can't even imagine what that experience would be like. But there's a lot of singing and a lot of celebration. And even in Mexico, I was just in Mexico in October for Dia de los Muertos, and how they honor death and how they, prepare and, everyone goes to the cemetery and they cook, their loved one's favorite meals and bring out their favorite beers. And, it's a celebration. It's a party. It's not a sad time. It's a grateful, like, we got to experience this person for as long as we have. And now they're watching us and taking care of us on the other side is what they believe. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so many beautiful, rich cultures around dying. And, even though I don't know about all of them, I am definitely open to learning in any ways people want to hold death.
Yeah, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, author. He took a dose of LSD on his deathbed, and it was like a huge dose too. It was like an astronomical dose.
Yeah, that was like his dying wish, is that he wanted to go out with the medicine. So his wife served him, a really, really large dose of LSD, and I mean, again, what a way! Like, if I'm all for people going out the ways that they want to go out, and what a way to go out! I mean,
see, I would be afraid to do that. I would think it might alter the transition.
I mean, you never know, right? Like, who knows? We don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, by the way, that Aldous Huxley death took place at the exact same time as the JFK assassination, whatever that means. Okay. It was on the same day, almost at the exact same time.
Yeah, I highly recommend his book, The Doors of Perception, too. That's a really great book, too.
There you go. Now what about these other cultures? Do they have the same kind of thinking that we have here in the West about the reward or punishment after death?
Some do. I would say, just like the Egyptians, yes. Mexican culture, yes, just because they were so ingrained in, like, the Catholic religion, and believed in, heaven and hell and good versus evil. Buddhists and, sages believe in, karmic debts. Did you repay your karmic debts? If not, you'll be reincarnated and play out lives until your debts are paid. So, there's all these different beliefs of, karma and heaven and hell and intention and the purity of your heart. And I think all of it has some validity to it. But then in the same breath, there's like a uniqueness to each individual death. So I guess it depends on the individual and how fulfilled they felt in their life that they lived.
And then what do you think about reincarnation, coming back to the same earth?
I don't know. Again, like I think the idea and the knowledge we have of it is all very interesting, but I don't attach to any one belief or idea. There's this amazing scientist called Rick Strassman, and he did a lot of the DMT trials in the early 90s, and he was really big on Buddhist culture, and he found that the Buddhists believed that from the moment of death, it took your soul exactly 43 days to reincarnate into another body. And what he found through his studies is when a mother is pregnant with a fetus, it takes exactly 43 days from utero to when the sex is determined in the baby, which I thought that was a really interesting correlation. If the Buddhists believed it took exactly 43 days for the soul to reincarnate, and it takes 43 days to find a sex of a baby, it's almost like that soul kind of incarnated into that fetus at that exact moment in time. So it's very interesting. Like I said, I love all these ideas and I love the mystery of it all, but I don't actually know.
I'd say, okay, now as far as death goes and the passing goes, is there anything I haven't asked you about that that you want the audience to know? Your thinking, your beliefs?
I just feel like normalizing death. I feel like just talking about death, asking. I know it's a weird question to throw out to your group of friends, but asking someone how they want their death to look like, how they want to die, what they feel about death, are they afraid of death? I think that opening up this conversation to the people close to us and to our loved ones can be a really, really beautiful bonding experience, and to kind of help each other alleviate the fear. And it goes back to this quote I always love by Baba Ram Dass, who is a great guru who has passed, but we are all just walking each other home.
Fascinating you would mention Ram Dass because we were just talking about Fred, we were just talking about AJ, because I used to, these were like major smugglers, hash dealers and marijuana dealers, okay, and there was this huge shipment of hashish that came into New York City through Richard Stratton, the hippie mafia, and I had a big chunk of that hash, and I gave it to my friend, and he gave it as a gift to Ram Dass.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
What a small world.
Yes. And I know. And I had a very bizarre experience with him, too, because I ran into this guy. What was his name? His name was Mike something, and he's in the book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I forget his... Mike Moran. You can look him up. Okay. And I met him a couple of times. We were working on his project to bring coats to the homeless people in New York. And then I saw him years later, and I looked totally different. I had a short haircut. I could shave my beard off. And I had a bad experience on LSD, or my face turned into a demon face looking in the mirror. And he recognized me, and we talked about it. I said, no, I don't do that anymore. It was, you can't look in the mirror. Okay. So he got read right into me, man. Fascinating stuff, man. We bring back so many memories.
That's funny.
But now,
wow.
Ambra,
See, but that's what this is all about, bringing back fond memories and reliving and recounting like the special parts of this life we live. So keep doing it.
Yeah.
Keep remembering.
I tell you, I feel so good again. I'm having a rough week. I feel so. Now, what Ambra Marie? Okay. What is you have all these adventures, okay? All this study, you're studying all this stuff. You're a brilliant woman. You're learning this stuff. You're absorbing it. What is an average day like for you?
Like I said, I'm a mom, so I got to do my mom duties before I get into all the weirdness I'm into. But an average day for me is waking my son up for school, getting his lunch ready, taking him to school, going and working my quote unquote 9-to-5 job, even though it's not a 9-to-5 job. I live a normal life like everybody else, but I also live my life. I don't identify to any, labels or any structure. I do what I need to do to live a complete and full life. And for me, that means being home with my children and going and, hanging out with my friends and, doing, normal things as well, but also exploring and experiencing all that I possibly can.
And how do you do that? Like you research on the internet or you listen to podcasts? How do you do that?
Just by connecting with other people. It's amazing when you show a little compassion and empathy towards one another and truly get to learn and know about people, the doors that open up. because all the experiences I have experienced have just been through communicating and getting to know other people and learning about their adventures and kind of having them show me the way. And yeah, just trusting that people are put in my path for a reason, and exploring what that means. When I went to Peru, I never thought I would go into the middle of the jungle off-grid living with an indigenous tribe. But this man I met at a conscious gathering out in LA was doing a talk about it. And I was like, I want to talk to this guy. And I went and talked to him afterwards, and he gave me all the information. And 6 months later, I was in the jungle.
Yeah, I had a friendship. The audience will know who I'm talking about. Stephen Hoffenberg, who at one point owned the New York Post, and he was actually the mentor and employed Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, all right.
Oh.
Yeah, and he went to prison, so he left holding the bag for this big financial scam. But he said to me once, he goes, Ed, just meet and interact with as many people as possible. Because I asked him, how'd you make so much money? He says, meet as many people as possible and interact with as many people as possible. Now, real quick, though, back to the death stuff. Now, when you're with your friends and your family, do you talk about death?
Yeah. So, I understand people are really uncomfortable talking about death, but I do. Everywhere I go, I carry death with me, and I don't shy away from it anymore. And even speaking with my grandmother, she's getting old. She's my birthday twin. We have celebrated and shared our birthday every single year since I've been born. And as she's getting older, I realize these moments are few and far between. They're fleeting moments. Like, I'm not going to have this forever.
Right.
So her and I have had a lot of really deep discussions about death, and she's even been preparing her legacy work. She's been accumulating all these old pictures of all of us, of her children, her grandchildren from all the years, and putting them in like memory books for us all to have. And even when my grandfather passed away, she took all his shirts and, made a quilt. So,
wow.
I've been able to talk to her about death, and, she kind of even has like a really good sense of humor, because we have to have a sense of humor about it as well. But she even jokes around about it, like, oh, when I kick the bucket, everyone's going to be fighting over my jewelry, so I'm going to make sure I get it all squared away before, I'm gone. So, I mean, it's great to hear her speak about death like that, because I know she's not afraid of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now what about, it really is, man. Now, what about when you say you go to Peru to live with these indigenous people? Now, what's the process? Do you just show up? Are you invited?
Oh, no.
How does that work?
So they prepare for us. So the man I was speaking about earlier, his name is Fabian Rodriguez. He's been going there for many, many years. So he gets together small groups of people. He's in contact with the main medicine man out there. They call them curanderos, or shamans, shapibos. So he's in contact with him. And, they just pre-plan this, and they do it 2 months out of the year. They'll take a small group of people out there, and we'll fly out to Peru, we'll drive to the edge of the river, we'll take a canoe upriver, we'll hike into the jungle, and then we're there. We're immersed. They're ready for us. We have to completely be accepting of whatever diet they give us, because, I don't eat meat, but when I'm there, like, I'll eat eggs, because, I mean, you get what you get out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're prepared for us, and you have to prepare yourself as well. So before we even go out there, it's a 45-day journey for us to completely detox our diet. So we have to get rid of any processed foods, any sugars, any alcohol, any recreational drugs, even sex. We have to completely purify our bodies before we go out there, because if we don't, we're going to be in a lot of shock because it's a completely different world out there. They don't have the accessibility to things that we have here. So yeah, it's a whole journey.
It's like Naked and Afraid, you gotta get off that sugar and that coffee for a couple of months before you go out there.
Yeah, otherwise you're gonna be hurting if you don't.
It's so true. If you've ever gone off sugar, I do the Daniel fast. I haven't done it lately, but I was doing it for like 6 months at a time. And the detox from sugar is like the worst thing you go through. Now, what about the language? How do you communicate? They don't speak English.
So they do speak Spanish.
Okay.
Their main dialect is their Shipibo language, but they also do speak Spanish because the towns that they live close to in Peru are Spanish speaking, and sometimes they do have to go into town to get things of water to bring back in the jungle or whatever. But yeah, Spanish. And we have a translator with us, Fabian being one of them. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I understand it way more than I can speak it.
Yeah.
It takes me a little bit to conjugate the proper verbs so that I don't say something completely asinine. But yeah, we get by. I mean, you'd be amazed how much you really don't need language to communicate with another individual. Just kind of using your other senses to communicate and kind of bringing those senses online that we don't really use to communicate with do a lot of good too.
So you detox before you get out there, and then you're there for 2 months.
So I've only gone for 2 weeks at a time, just because I can't leave my children that long.
Right.
They would be traumatized. So I've gone for 2 weeks, which in itself, 2 weeks completely off grid without being able to speak to anyone, with having no phone access, nothing. It seems like 2 months. So yeah, we go out there for 2 months. We sit with medicines. We hike. We learn about the culture. We learn their songs. We do art. It's just being completely immersed into another way of living.
And then what's the cost?
So the cost for this it's $2,000, but it includes everything except your airfare. But it includes all the travel, the translator, all your food, lodging, all your medicine ceremonies.
No, that's a bargain, yeah. And
yeah, it's not bad.
What is the lodging? What's the lodging like?
So
oh no, she's laughing.
It's not a Motel 6, that would even be an upgrade. And Motel 6 is not fancy. You're basically in a small wooden structure with screens so that you don't get bit by mosquitoes, and you have a bed, and that's it. That's all you have. And yeah, there's no running water, so there's no plumbing. So you're having to, go to the bathroom the old school way and shower in the river and bathe in the river. And yeah, it's definitely, it's not for everyone, but it's been an amazing experience, and it's really, really humbled me. And it's really allowed me to detox from such an overconsumed life that we live here.
That is so true, man. Just try getting away from your phone for a couple of hours. I know you're addicted to that. Fabian Rodriguez, I'm going to try and get him on the show. We should do an interview with him if he's available.
Oh gosh, you should. He probably has amazing stories to share about everything.
But Ambra, we did it again because we had that little glitch with the phone connection. We've gone way over time. I wasn't counting the time correctly. So we've gone way over time. Ambra Marie. Ambra, how can the best way for people to contact Ambra Marie and get a copy of your book, and or they need a death doula?
I would say my Instagram is probably the easiest way to find me, because as you said earlier, I like to make it a little complicated. And if you're meant to find me, you're meant to find me. But Instagram, Ricky for Lou. I have everything linked in my bio there. You can go to my website. You can see, all my travels, my blog, everything, all the services I have to offer. You can purchase my book as well. So yeah, Instagram's probably the best and friendliest way.
Yeah, you should really think about doing a podcast.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've never thought about it. Thank you for planting that seed.
No, think about it for sure. I'll even put up on one of my platforms for you. Ambra Marie, it's Ricky #4 LOU on Instagram. That's the best way to get a hold of her. But if you want to email me, I'll get the message over to her too. Thank you so much. Okay, Ambra?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good night.
Good night.